You have to just take it. And we're live. This is it now, right? All right, good. Good afternoon to everybody, all our viewers in Jamaica and across the world who are in tune for Caribbean Environment Week. It's been an interesting few days so far. We have lots of topics to cover, and I'm very excited about hosting this panel discussion this afternoon. My name is Kalila Reynolds. You may know me as being a business journalist, and you may be wondering, what's Kalila doing in Caribbean Environment Week? But that's because business and the environment intricately twined. Now, and today is achieving actually go hand in hand. As a matter of fact, when I was at Caramac, my professor, Agri Brown, the late great Professor Agri Brown, used to drill this definition of economic development into our heads. And he defined development as constituting reciprocal action between people and their environment that leads to the actualization of human potential in all its dimensions and the preservation and continuity of the environment as they create society and history. What a definition, right? And so by his arguments, Professor Brown used to always say that there's no such thing as sustainable development. That is actually redundant because development implies that it has to be sustainable. It has to be able to continue. If it's not sustainable, it's not development, it's only growth. And so this afternoon, we have an esteemed panel to discuss this very topic, sustainable development, as Professor Brown would say, just development, and the implications for business. So we're joined now by Richard Cole from the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association. We also have with us Raquel Moses. She's the CEO of Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator. So we have the business interest represented and we have the environmental interest represented. And today we're going to talk where the two merge. So good afternoon, Richard. Good afternoon, Raquel.
Good afternoon, Kalila and Raquel.
Oh, there's a little bit of a delay, but we're just going to work with it, right? Just bear in mind that there's a slight delay. But let me start with you, Richard, on the business side. So the JMEA, you all comprise of manufacturers and exporters. And when you are a manufacturer, you're making things.
That is, oh, sorry.
When you're making them, yes, go ahead. I was asking you if the environment is top of mind when you're in the manufacturing process.
Is manufacturing top of mind? That's your question.
No, is the environment top of mind when you're in the manufacturing process? Is that something that even is considered, that comes up?
It is considered. Whether it is top of mind, I think that we have much more to do. I'll start by saying that. It is a consideration when we are in fact looking to bring on a new member. So we do site visits, for example, and in doing the site visits, we look at how the business is operating. And if there are things that we're not happy with, then it would be taken into consideration as to whether we would want to bring them into the JMEA. So it is something that is as a part of considering individuals in becoming a part of the JMEA. Certainly it is a factor. Whether it is a priority, I think that there's a lot more that we could do.
What do you look for on those site visits?
Well, we look at how the business is operated, first of all, whether it's in fact a manufacturer. So that's the first thing that we want to confirm. And then we look at its operations, whether it's managing the environment in a sustainable way, whether they're disposing of raw materials that's used in production in a responsible manner. We ask questions about what they're doing and how they procure raw materials and how they sell their products. So it's a range of questions just to make sure that we know who we are engaging with and bringing into our organization.
Yeah. Well, let me take a couple of steps back and bring Raquel in here. So Raquel, what role of sustainability in nation building? What role does that play? Raquel, your mic is off. Your mic is muted. Just unmute for me, please. Okay, Raquel's mic is still muted. Well, let's come back to Richard while she sorts out that technical issue. So this is the thing, we're all learning how to cope in the new normal, and figuring out how to do Zoom, you know? So, well, let me throw the question to you then, Richard. So what role does sustainable development play in nation building?
Sure. I mean, sustainable development, it plays an instrumental role in the true growth of any nation. Our world, as we know it, is advancing rapidly, and as a consequence, it places certain stresses on our environment and our population. And it's obviously important to strike a balance between social, economic, and environmental demands of our society, and just to supply our present needs while protecting our needs in the future. And so with that in mind, sustainable development plays a key role in management conservation, energy efficiency, how we use our renewable and non-renewable resources, and enabling an equitable and higher standard of living for all our citizens. And all of these things are important to ensuring the progression of our country within the aim of a viable economy and an equitable society. And an endurable environment.
So is it that you have like an overall strategic plan when you are considering what strategy to take in terms of the environment? Or do you find that most businesses don't really, it's an afterthought, they don't think about it that much?
I would say that for most businesses, particularly micro, small, and medium-sized entities, it's a side thought. Their focus usually is to get their business up and running and to keep the business running. I think that most, unless you as an individual, as a business owner, if that's something that is inherently important within you, otherwise, I don't think it's given the attention that it should. The larger organizations, yes, go on.
Go ahead.
The larger manufacturing and exporting companies, I think, take a more holistic view of their impact on the environment and other aspects of business, and realize that being sustainable, reducing one's carbon footprint is important. So I think it tends to be more part of a larger organization strategy, and it's something that the micro, small, and medium-sized entities need to focus on more.
Hello.
So what are some of the things that a smaller business can do? I think we're hearing Raquel now. Raquel, that is your lovely
wonderful,
voice.
wonderful. Thank you.
And now I'm seeing you as
I had to
well.
join from my phone. For some reason, it just didn't work. All right. Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's bring you in.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes.
Glad to have
Yay.
you. Raquel Moses is on. And just to remind you, viewers, Raquel is the CEO of Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator. So Raquel, let me throw the question back to you that I had just posed to Richard. So
Sure.
What role does sustainable development play in economic growth, in nation building?
You know, it's really funny because I think that it's such a very similar question to, whether you need to shut down to prevent COVID or you need to start up because business needs to run. It's not an either or. You cannot have a sustainable
Okay.
business unless you are thinking about the sustainable development goals, because ultimately you're playing the short game and not the long game. And so we have to be able to balance our ongoing interests with looking after the environment. It's like, trying to play a game and the field is eroding. So you absolutely need to continue to play because that's how it sustains all of our livelihoods. But you also have to be actively participating in ensuring that we are building as sustainably as possible. Our position at the accelerator is that we need to change this climate crisis into an economic opportunity. So we need to be building capacity. We need to be creating products and services. We need to be greening our exports. We need to, what we know is that by 2050, this is a $50 trillion industry. And what we'd like to see is that we take a leading piece of that pie because we are on the front lines and we are impacted first. So as much as possible, for us to build our capacity, create intellectual property, and to use this as an economic opportunity, because ultimately it's a change that everybody's going to have to make.
You used the phrase just now, greening our exports. Expand on what that means.
So, for example, when Richard was talking about the fact that, sorry about the baby in the background, Richard was talking about that in the manufacturing process, the environment isn't the first consideration. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but certainly when you look at all of the free trade agreements that we have across the region and the market access that we have operationalized as a result of some of those arrangements, we're not necessarily getting the kind of access to the markets that we ought to. So we have these agreements, but we're not putting them into action. By greening our exports or creating exports that have a higher environmental factor, that automatically makes the product more attractive on an external market. So again, to think about this, not in terms of, well, we're all tree huggers and we need to save the environment, but thinking about it in terms of, listen, this is where the market is going. And so if we can, create higher value products with a smaller impact on the environment and position them that way, we will have, be able to utilize the market access that we have.
So your products can attract a premium. And this reminds me of a situation I'm familiar with in agriculture. There's something called fair trade, whereby you get the fair trade stamp if your produce meets certain standards, such as they guarantee that you don't use child labor, you pay your farmers a fair wage, you don't use certain pesticides and that type of thing. And those products are
and you're tracking it from source
are able to attract a premium price. So is there anything like that for exporters who want to get some type of stamp of approval from somewhere that would help them to attract a premium price?
So not actively that I'm aware of. There's no sort of stamp at the moment, but there are all kinds of sort of, organic, we can use ourselves. And one of the things that I think that we really need to start thinking about, and I'm sure it's something that Mia Motley would have already considered because I find her to be such a forward thinker, is that a lot of these sort of agencies that either rank or provide these stamps of approval, they are external to us. And to them, we are very, very small. And so we typically, not only are we not taken into consideration, but it's an uphill climb when we start to seek after these designations. I think it'd be great if we would develop our own designation within the region and then use that as to some of the external markets, especially those with which we have some trade agreements, to say, listen, we have a trade imbalance. We want to increase our access to your market. We don't want any handouts, but we want you to empower us by providing us with greater access to your market. We want to be able to use this designation to be able to determine the eco standard of a particular product, and we would like you to adopt that as well. Because what you find a lot of times is that other governments are willing to give us some sort of aid, but what we need is less aid, or at least, not necessarily less aid, because I'm sure somebody's going to want to jump down my throat about less aid, but we need a balance of adequate aid plus things that allow us to be more self-sufficient. And I think that, when people talk about, should we be focusing less on tourism and more on diversifying our economies? I think tourism at its peak was at a fantastic level. What we need to do is grow everything else so that we're less dependent upon tourism alone, so that we have a bigger pie from which we can balance when things are out of kilter.
Absolutely. I've been saying this too, especially with what has happened with COVID now. We need to be less dependent on tourism. You want to jump in there, Richard?
Well, yes, I mean, I totally concur. And I think that what is happening within manufacturing in Jamaica is moving in that general direction. Companies, even my company, we used to make, to a large extent, products under license for Revlon. And over the past couple of years, we've been moving away from the chemical-based product to more natural products, removal of sulfates and parabens, and answering to what is now in demand, which is a more natural-based product, because that's where the world is heading. So there is change and there's movement in the right direction. Is it fast enough? Perhaps not. But I think that things are being done and manufacturers are looking to what people are asking for, and they're changing the products that they make to cater to those needs.
Yeah, we do see those stamps certified organic or eco-friendly.
Sulfate-free,
Some people have just made up their sulfate-free and all that stuff. People have just been making up their own standards and applying them, putting those labels on the bottles because the customers do care. Many of the customers care. And for businesses, Richard, it's businesses that are driven by the bottom line, you're profit driven, revenue driven. This matters, it makes a difference. But let me take a question that we have online. So Steve Kemp says, as tourism is one of the region's main exports, we need to concentrate huge effort on greening this sector. So Raquel, as the person who introduced the concept of greening, let me hear your thoughts on that. As tourism is one of the region's main exports, don't we need to concentrate effort on greening tourism?
Absolutely. And I think that, there's so many, you find that the locations with more green tourism tend to not necessarily market it as well. And so we need to be able to, one, sort of raise the standard or create a standard around green tourism product visits. So how can you, there are all kinds of exciting things taking place in little pockets. There are tours where people can go and do beach cleanup, for example. Now, who wants to do that on their holiday? I don't know. But, if that is something that you can get people to do, and pay for it, exactly. If you can get somebody to do that, then great. But we have so many treasures within the region, and it's about, creating sort of a boutique experience where you green the solution. So maybe the smaller destinations and not necessarily focused on the big, large properties, but some of the more intimate experiences and, looking at not necessarily the big attractions, but smaller attractions, or making sure that all of this food is locally sourced and sustainable food, and telling that story in your attraction so that, again, people can feel good about coming to your destination and feeling like, I'm having a very green experience, or to be able to map the carbon footprint of your visit and say, okay, while I may have gotten on a plane or a cruise and I may have come to this destination, but the net impact of this visit was, negative or at least break even. And so it's about doing all of those kinds of things, allowing people to plant trees, and different sorts of those kinds of attractions that can help to green the tourism sector. But I also think that we really need to focus on building the rest of our industries alongside tourism so that we have more buffer during times like this.
Richard, let me hear your thoughts on that.
No, I agree. I think that what the manufacturing sector can do to support the tourism sector is to be given the opportunity to supply it with the products that they need to serve their customers. That's something that the JMEA is lobbying quite strongly on over the past couple of months. Given the impacts of COVID, we've seen that it's quite clear that the country cannot continue to be completely or to a large extent dependent on tourism. And it's clear that the manufacturing sector has a significant role to play to maintain the GDP of the country. So, you know, it's for us to collaborate more with the tourism sector and to see how we can provide the products that they are in need of.
Yeah. You know, earlier we were mentioning the labels that we can apply to our products as manufacturers. To what extent, Richard, are Jamaican manufacturers applying these types of labels, such as eco-friendly or climate-friendly, or the sulfate and the paraben-free, pesticide-free, or whatever it may be? To what extent is that used by manufacturers here?
It is used by some manufacturers. As I said, certainly within the hair care market. And there are others that manufacture pesticides that use eco-friendly logos. But is it a standard? Is there a standard? No. And I think it's a good point that we should have a seal of approval for different types of products to prove the point that it's gone through rigorous testing to prove that this is an environmentally friendly product. Absolutely, I think it's a good idea.
That would be awesome. Who would lead that? Perhaps that's a low-hanging fruit, Raquel, for someone to take up that mantle.
I absolutely agree. It could be, and I think it should be something that's regional rather than just Jamaica-centric. I mean, you know, and I hope that despite the fact that Jamaica is the brand, you know, wherever you go on the four corners of the earth, people are aware of Jamaica and not so much some of the other islands. But if there's a Caribbean stamp of approval, then it's something that we can all benefit from, because we have to realize that we are each other's first customers as well. So if we can sort of, you know, the rising tide raises all boats, if we can create something that's regional in nature and put enough sort of emphasis behind it, then we have the ability to sell all the products across the region and ensure that they have adhered to this rigorous standards, but also make the others pay us for it as well, so that they can get their products approved and stamped, etc.
I think it would have to be regional, because it would take some considerable resources to do it. So I'm thinking the same way that products that are locally made have to go through the BSG, the Bureau of Standards, and they get that approval that you're good, you pass, and you're good for sale or good for consumption or whatever it may be. There could be another organization leading the effort to certify that this product is environmentally friendly, and there could be revenue at least generated by the application process, and that could allow this organization, probably it could be a nonprofit NGO organization, to sustain itself. I think that's something that's workable.
Yeah.
That's a potential solution coming out of this. Yay. All right, so let me take another question from online. Joshua Anderson says, do you think we can make green products that can sustainably compete on a global scale? So Richard, do you think we can make green products? Okay,
without
Raquel
question,
wants to answer, so you go ahead.
No, I'm with Richard. Without question. And you know, I think a lot of times we do ourselves a disservice by not realizing our ability to create quality. But I'll let Richard. You are in that industry.
Yes, I mean there are.
No, but doesn't it add to the cost though? I think the reason the question comes up is that perhaps it adds to the cost of creating this thing, of creating the product. And so the person is interested in knowing, once we have these additional barriers, can our product still be competitive globally in terms of price?
Yes, I get the point. Yes, you can if you have good manufacturing and procurement practices. So you're making sure that you find the right supplies of your raw materials, and the efficiency of your operation is such that you can come out with a competitively priced product. The main issue is the economies of scale, and that's regardless of whether you're making an environmentally sustainable product or not. If you don't have enough volume, the costs of production per unit tend to be significantly higher, which makes you non-competitive. So to answer the point, yes, we can, and there are companies who are doing it with great success. So yeah, it's again, in order for it to succeed overseas, it tends to be that it has to succeed locally. And I think that is where we have a greater issue. Because of the disposable income and what people are prepared to pay for a product locally is very different from what people are prepared to pay for an environmentally friendly product overseas. And if you're coming out with a product, you need to attain a certain level of volume locally before you can start to become competitive overseas. Again, going back to economies of scale.
This is the one point where I'm probably going to disagree with Richard. There are people making a living selling shoes for $1,500 US. I think sometimes we think too much about the price point. And while I appreciate that the local market is different from the international market, products like Red Bull, both the price point, the taste, and the function shouldn't exist if the only thing that people think about is cost. I think we have to start thinking very differently about the products that we produce. And even if they don't have a place on the local market, because we're still catching up in our perception of the value of environmentally friendly products, I think that we have the ability to access external markets. And one of the things that we see at the accelerator.
So you're saying, Raquel, you could start out external? You could start that way, because I think
I'd say develop. Yes, I would say. I'm saying that we don't have to start internally. And I'm saying yes.
What do you think about that, Richard?
I would say no, you don't have to, or you shouldn't have to.
It's very hard for a business to succeed overseas before it can successfully operate and sell its products locally. Very, very difficult to do. Yes, there are some examples of companies that have managed to export a product without relying on local demand, but that's very insignificant. The general sort of metric of success is to achieve locally and to then take that product overseas. Not to, as I said, not to say that it's impossible, but it's not typical.
To borrow a phrase from dancehall culture, you have a bust a yard first and then bust abroad. Bust a yard, then bust abroad. But Raquel, given the changes in the digital landscape, or let me throw it back to Richard. Richard, given the changes in the digital landscape, is that still true? So traditionally, I could understand where it would be true, where you need to nurture your local markets first. And once you're successful here, then you can start exporting. But now with the internet, now that the world is all connected, is that necessarily still the case?
No, I mean, are you talking about making your product successful with the use of digital marketing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it easier for your product to succeed overseas by using digital marketing. Absolutely, there's no question about it. But it still comes to the point that your product needs to achieve a certain level of volume initially before it can be competitively on a price point argument. So you can't just come up with a product and sell it overseas and expect it to be successful when there are probably products just like what you're making that are cheaper. So you've got to achieve a certain economies of scale so that you can have a competitive unit price on your product.
And bear in mind that there are costs to exporting too.
Absolutely, and you may know that The cost of exporting from Jamaica is prohibitive. And I think that there's a lot that the government needs to do to offer better support in allowing products to enter first world markets at better prices.
Raquel, you wanted to add to that?
Sure. I think that we limit ourselves by thinking about price first. I don't think that that's how, if you read like Alchemy, it'll tell you about several different products where, they defied the normal convention that you had to meet a particular price point. And what we need to do is to create our own niches of unique products that are special to us, that we can attract a premium. There are a number of things that I think that we also need to do in the way that we position and market these products. And when you look abroad into, Louis Vuitton, Dolce & Gabbana, Valentino, brands like that, do you know there are Caribbean people who are making the decisions about selling those products at a premium and how those products are positioned? And I think we need to tap into our diaspora to be able to learn some of the lessons from those premium brands abroad and the Caribbean people who are running it.
Are any of those products positioned as environmentally friendly, Raquel? I think it'd be useful if we have an example of a product that is positioned as environmentally friendly that does charge this premium that we've been talking about.
This is what I'm saying. No, because this is exactly the point I'm making. We don't need an example. We need to create that example. That's the whole point. But there are lots of things. I bought some coconut oil in a jar that has some rose hip in it. Now, I know that's not what coconut oil costs. And I know that if I bought local coconut oil, it would be cheaper. However, because of how this was mixed and how it smells and how it makes me feel, I'm willing to pay a premium for that product because I'm having a relationship with that product. And so I'm not saying that we follow the premium brands because they are eco-friendly, they are anything but we need to understand that there is an opportunity for us to create our own niche with the branding that we have and with the uniqueness of the place that we're from. And we shouldn't necessarily compete with everybody else in the market that everybody else is competing in, because that will limit us to compete by their rules. We need to be able to create and play to our own strengths rather than trying to play to somebody else's.
So as you spoke, if you saw me looking down, it's because I was just Googling something really quickly. We can take our cues from social enterprise when it comes to this. So there are many businesses that have a social model, and one that comes to mind is Tom's Shoes. You guys know there's some cute shoes. They're a little bit flimsy for the price, but what they do is that for each pair of shoes that you buy, they donate a pair to somebody in a developing country. So the shoes cost something like $100 US. I would pick up the shoe, I would look at it, and I wouldn't think it's worth $100 US. I'd probably think maybe 20 US. But people pay $100 US for those shoes because of the social cause behind it. And so Tom's Shoes now is a multi-billion-dollar company because of the social cause. And I think that environmentalists and people who are thinking about incorporating environmental strategies into business could take their cues from social enterprise in that way. And so that's the premium example that you were talking about, Raquel. I don't know that it's been pursued as much as it could be from that angle.
I don't think that we should be following others as much. But go ahead. Sorry, Richard.
No, I would agree. I think it's a good idea. And I think we all are starting to become more aware of our social responsibility and our environmental responsibility. We're seeing, weather events being more extreme. There's talk about how COVID came about, and was it as a result of man encroaching upon natural habitat? So we're all asking ourselves questions of what do we need to do to change, to sustain our futures and our children's futures. So yeah, I think it's a good idea to look at that possibly as a business model for some businesses, maybe not for all, Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I was just about
Can
to
we take
say, I'm sure Richard, like me, better on mute.
Sorry?
I don't think so. She said that she's sure you liked her better on mute. No, 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 I don't think so. All right, let's
I
take some of the
prefer to hear
comments.
from you.
Yeah, let's take some of the comments from social media. So did I ask the first one already, or these are all new? They're all new. All right. So Kemar says, does the government of Jamaica have a green sustainability policy regarding manufacturing and service sectors? Are you aware of any, Richard?
No, it's not a specific to the manufacturing sector, but there is a sustainability paper, a 2030 paper, and it speaks to manufacturing, and it's just a part of a spoke of many aspects of the Jamaican economy and how it needs to provide support so that we can grow and develop individually and as a country up until 2030. So that vision started in 2010. It's a 20-year plan. So there is focus with regard to the manufacturing sector.
So there's another question. This one is for you as well, Richard. This comes from Joshua Bennett. He says, is it likely we will see a green standard implemented by the JMEA to reduce any negative impact the manufacturing industry may have on the environment and better promote the development of these green products?
I think it's a good idea. It's not something that we've considered. I am a part of the JMEA board, so it's something I will put to them. I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Open Plan Studio says Jamaican and Caribbean cultural products have great international appeal. Digital leaps forward in response to COVID make some of these even easier to export with very low environmental impacts. Any thoughts about how to convert this into significant economic growth? Let me throw that to you, Raquel.
Yeah, so I think that what we need is a comprehensive strategy across the region, looking at how we can support each other to reduce some of the costs of market access outside of the region, but also to have greater access within the region. For example, the intra-regional trade inside of the EU is 74%. So 74% of the products and services that they produce are used within their environment. In CARICOM, it's somewhere between 14 and 17%. So we have a lot of capacity within the region if we were to work more closely together. And I think part of the challenge isn't an unwillingness to work together, but certainly it is that we all have different currencies and we're not on, outside of the Eastern Caribbean, we're not on a single currency regime. So we're working with a company in Barbados called BIT, and they're trying to implement the Caribbean settlement network to allow us to get over that issue. So in addition to sort of looking more externally and developing those markets together and reducing the cost of doing that, by working together, we also have the ability to work together and access each other's markets and have that positively impact the work that we're doing as well.
I want to come back to something that we started touching on a little bit earlier, and it's this seeming friction between green and growth. They're often touted as opposites, as against each other. Like there's this fight between development and the environment. So you'd have the environmentalists on the one hand and the developmentalists, I don't know what you would call them, on the other hand. And there's a perfect example that's playing out right now. So I saw the Jamaica Environment Trust, JET, raise an objection very recently to mining in, I think it's a part of St. Anne. This was in the news very recently. And they were, opposing Twitter from a friend of mine on #finance Twitter JA, saying, can we be opposing something right now that creates jobs? Have we heard that we've lost 130,000 jobs because of COVID-19? Anything can take and provide jobs, we need to be taking. We don't have the luxury of thinking of these environmental reasons not to pursue something when people need to feed themselves. So, Richard, how do you strike that balance between environmental causes and people just having a legitimate need to feed their families?
Yeah, it is particularly difficult in this environment that we now find ourselves in, with the GDP rates dropping by, I think it was 18% in the second quarter of this year. Companies are struggling. Businesses are closing their doors. They are struggling to keep their staff members employed. Are they thinking, is being environmentally friendly, reducing carbon footprint at the top of their mind? No. They're trying to keep their businesses open. There are companies that may have had funds set aside to invest in solar panels, for example, and they may have had to shelve those plans because now they're focused more on cash flow management and making, not knowing what's going to be happening in 2021. They're thinking, right, it's better that we hold on to our reserves and hope that things improve. So it's a really challenging time that we're facing. So yes, it's something that we need to continue to educate the public and businesses about, but it is even more now than ever a challenge for businesses.
Yeah, so Raquel, what do you say to the businessman or woman who is being told right now, you can't do that because it's not environmentally friendly, but they have starving or hungry children to feed?
Yeah, it's funny. My dad asked me the other day, because he's like, "What is it that you do?" So I explained it to him, and then he said, "So you hate all the oil companies." I said, "Listen, if the oil companies stopped producing today, everything would stop. You actually need to use fossil fuels to produce solar panels. So there is no sort of push-pull where that is concerned. It's about finding the balance, right? And so we need to determine, even if you have to do something that's not environmentally friendly, what's your exit strategy? Because ultimately, the entire landscape is moving in a particular direction. So what I would encourage for people who are trying to survive right now, take a look at what it is that you're building, because what you don't want is that you get into this thing short term because of the issue that you're having now, and then you end up back here because you were too short term in your thinking about what your needs are. I understand that, there's a time to feast and there's a time to plant, but we have to be able to think of the long game, because, the planet is a long game. And so we need to be able to make a living, but you have to be able to do that in a sustainable fashion, because that is where things are going.
Yeah, it brings me back to Professor Brown's definition of development, that it has to be sustainable, because if you're so focused on the short term, on the now, and you deplete all the resources in the now, sure, you may eat now, but what happens next week? What happens next year? What happens 5 years from now when you depleted all the resources and there's nothing left? And now you have to go right back to square one. You're in the same situation that you started with. We have some more comments on social media. All right, so we have a question from YouTube. Do you think that companies should focus on carbon capture and reutilization in order to put a cap on their carbon emissions until they can transition into using renewable energy sources efficiently?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I'm really, really excited about the potential for carbon capture. I think that not only because I think it's the right thing to do, but I think that there is going to be a lot of money in carbon capture.
Let's stick a pin before you continue, Raquel. Let's stick a pin. So what is carbon capture?
So carbon capture is creating either a product or a solution that instead of creating carbon emissions, that it reduces the carbon output in the environment. So there are people who are doing it with concrete. There are people who are doing it with plastics and then turning those plastics into housing. So recycling plastics and using that to capture carbon. And so, our objective is to limit our carbon emissions or limit our greenhouse emissions in order to be able to keep the world either as it is right now or no more than 1.5 degrees hotter than the mean temperature. And so there are a number of companies and countries that have said, okay, I have this carbon cap or I have this goal for my carbon emissions, and they are going to require carbon capture. So I think carbon capture is one of the biggest opportunities. Everybody's jumping on the solar bandwagon and investing in solar. And I think solar is phenomenal, but solar's figured out already. It is figuring out the things that aren't yet completely figured out, like battery storage is something to get into now. If you're looking to get into something future-proof, battery storage and sustainability now is what Facebook and Google were 20 years ago. It is the time to get into it because it's going to take off. So carbon capture, for me, I think brilliant opportunity, because there are oil companies that have made obligations to net zero emissions, and it is impossible for them to do that without carbon capture or carbon sequestration in some way, shape, or form.
So we've been talking around the issue of renewable energy. You mentioned solar as well. Richard, to what extent are Jamaican manufacturers using in their process?
Well, we recently did a survey with some of our manufacturers, and we asked that question: is sustainable development factored into your operations? 81% said yes. And that might not be with the use of solar panels, etc., but they were using some method of environmentally friendly practice that would eliminate or reduce their carbon footprint. So 81%. The next question that was asked is your business using alternative energy sources such as wind, solar, etc.? Only 27% of the respondents said yes. The remaining 72% said no. And another question that was asked was, for those that did use alternative energy solutions, did you get any incentives or financing for that? And all of those who responded to the affirmative said no, they did not get any financial support. And that's one of the big problems that we find with many manufacturers. The access to financing is a massive impediment. They have everyone wants to reduce their electricity bill, but when they go to seek financing, they're frequently told no. It's not, they just can't afford it. So that's a significant problem that we have, and it's something that I think that the government needs to help to provide greater support. There are institutions such as EXIM who are providing grants for funding, and the JMA is actively involved in facilitating access to those institutions. But still, it is still that's probably the most significant challenge that micro, small, and medium entities face.
I was going to point out that I am aware of institutions that offer access to funding for that very type of thing, EXIM being one. I believe the DBJ and IDB as well provide, if not grant funding, then at least access to low interest loans for that type of thing. So I'm surprised to hear that none of the respondents in the survey got any sort of help, not one.
Yeah. I mean, look, the JMA has a relationship with the VTA program, Voucher for Technical Assistance Program. It's a capacity building program with the Development Bank of Jamaica. We're also involved with an Ignite Innovation Grant, and that's with the DBJ. And that's geared towards offering financing to MSMEs. We're also involved with a JMA EXIM bank partnership, and that provides members with collateral-free financing. And then we also have a program with the Bureau of Standards, and that provides members with discounted access to services and and it helps to allow them to improve their processes and competitiveness. So we are doing what we can to provide access to financing, but even with that, the responses that we get from our MSME enterprises are that they still find it a significant impediment.
That's interesting. I think Raquel is having some technical challenges again. So we're gonna wait on her to start that up. And I know that she has to leave soon as well. So, but in the meantime, so that survey, I thought, Richard, that 27% actually was a lot more than I was expecting you to say, who are using some sort of alternative energy.
Yes, of the respondents that responded to the survey.
About 1 out of 4.
Yes, yes. Well, 1 out
so
of.
Despite those
yeah,
impediments, just about 1 out of 4 still has found a way to use some sort of alternative
renewable
energy. So that number
energy resource.
We can get much higher if there is a removal of the barriers to entry.
Absolutely, that's absolutely correct.
What are some of the policy changes that you think are needed for a real change? It doesn't have to be limited to renewable energy policy, but in terms of looking at business and the environment, what are some of the key policy changes that we need?
I think that a lot of the red tape that manufacturers face would make it a lot easier for them to operate. And if they could operate more freely, they might have the resources to be able to plan for implementing green energy initiatives. I think that the government needs to work more closely with the various manufacturers in Jamaica to give them the support that they need. It seems like sometimes we're just knocking against a brick wall when we ask for assistance. I think at the moment, electricity prices aren't that bad. So, we're not too worried about our energy bills, or some companies aren't. But I think we need to start planning, and we need to start engaging with various government entities to make sure that we are planning for increased energy prices in the future.
Yeah, the energy prices, electricity prices, not that bad compared to where we were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But they're still pretty high compared to the rest of the region.
That's correct. That's correct. It's
And
still
that's an issue. That's an issue with our competitiveness.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So looking at Vision 2030, which I think you brought up earlier, Richard, the National Development Plan is aimed at making Jamaica the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. We've heard that a million times. How is the JMEA charting a way forward for sustainable business practices to meet this 2030 goal, which is now only in 10 years?
Yes. It's, as I said, it's not been the focus of the JMEA, and we realize that we have much more work to do. And for us to be internationally competitive, we do need to look at our input costs, energy being one of the most significant factors in that. And if we can find a way to reduce the inputs in production, such as energy, we can become more effective, more productive, we can sell more, and we can become more environmentally friendly. So we recognize that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and the JMEA is going to be working more closely with the government to ensure that we play our part in achieving that vision.
So Raquel, I know you have to leave soon, and we're hearing you again, but can you unlock your phone? Just rotate. I think you have it locked. There we go. Now we can see you how we're supposed to be seeing you. So before you go, I want you to tell me about the CCSA, your organization, what the reception has been like since you launched just 2 years ago, and what have been some of the impediments that you've faced.
You know, it's been really, really incredible. We have been well received. I think the biggest challenge that we face is that everybody's incredibly busy and everybody's sort of working away at their plans. The other thing that is a bit of a challenge across the region is there are some jurisdictions that, you know, they say what they do what they say and they say what they're going to do. Others who say what they're going to do, but for some reason can't ever seem to put it into action. And we seem to have a challenge with that, where we can make big commitments and not follow through. And so it'd be great for us to sort of figure out how do we get greater throughput in the region across all of the countries, so that you know, whether it's voters keeping their governments in check and making sure that if you say you're going to do something, then you do it, or measuring the impact of the work that's taking place. You know, I have to say hats off to Jamaica. Jamaica made a reasonably modest commitment on its first nationally determined contribution, which is what you would commit to coming out of the Paris Agreement. But you met it, and then you up the ante and made an even bigger commitment. And that's the kind of thing that we want to see. We want to see countries that not only make and meet their commitments, but also choose commitments that are attainable, because that begins to build our confidence across the region that we are actually able to do what we say we're able to do. So, but we've been received really well. We have received a tremendous amount of support, both internationally as well as regionally. And what we hope to do is to keep doing what we say we're going to do, which is, you know, help the region to achieve 90% renewable energy, use this vulnerability as an economic opportunity, build our physical and economic resilience, and create jobs, and to create a map of where we are versus where we need to get to, and how we can fund some of those changes to make sure that we are moving ahead and moving the ball down the field at all times.
Thank you so much, Raquel. I know you have another engagement that you need to head off to. So thanks for speaking with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really exciting. Richard, I hope I didn't give you too much trouble, but you guys were excellent. I appreciate it.
Not at all. Not at all. Thank you, Raquel.
Bye.
All right. So Raquel is going to hop off, and I'm going to continue chatting with Richard for just a bit. We have a poll. All right. What's the poll? Okay. So I want the viewers to vote in this poll. Do you think economic growth and a healthy environment can coexist? Yes or no? Can economic growth and a healthy environment coexist? This has been the age-old debate. Yes or no? Or you're not sure. This is the thing that we've been talking about probably for centuries. This has been, what do you think, Richard? Can these two things coexist?
I don't even think it's a question. It has to. There can't be a no to this answer. We have to find a way to coexist. There you go. The answers are quite clear here. You know, we have to work together, and we have to find a way to have sustainable growth, or there will not be any growth. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah, there'll be nothing to come back to.
Absolutely.
I keep thinking of, for example, our maritime resources, fishing, and the fishers who, out of wanting to feed their families or greed or a combination of both, overfish. And you have closed seasons and open seasons for various fish. And the fishers still go in there, or not always Jamaican fishers, many times they're poachers from other countries, come here and overfish the seas, fish during closed season. And then what happens is that next season, you know, you have a less and less stock, and the stock just goes down and down and down, and it's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable practice. And it's the same type of thing that we need to consider when we are planning our businesses, when we're doing urban planning. For example, we've been seeing, Richard, all these apartments going up, and this has been a hot topic lately. The high-rise buildings going up, office buildings, apartment complexes. Has enough consideration been given to environmental causes and urban planning? So making sure that we have enough water for these buildings, making sure that we have enough drainage for these buildings. green
Alila,
new spaces.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, the regulatory agencies are not doing their job. I mean, I am next door neighbor to one of
Mm.
those developments, and it's terrible. The approvals have gone through without notification of neighbors in the surrounding community. It's a nightmare, and the government needs to do a better job. Absolutely. We're seeing some of the disasters faced in the Bull Bay area in St. Thomas, which is the road that my staff have to travel every day to get to head office, and it's our access point to our factory. And because of these heavy rains and poor planning, it has caused major disruptions for my business. So we need to do a better job, and we need to hold the government accountable.
And when you look at agencies like NEPA, they're often described as toothless, as being unable to enforce. So they will write letters and issue sanctions and say this and make noise, but at the end of the day, they're often ignored.
Yeah, but it's for us, the voting public, to let them know that we disapprove of what we're seeing. Absolutely. But I think that we also have a responsibility, we as citizens of Jamaica, to play our part. We've talked about big things like going solar and using carbon scrubbing or carbon capture techniques. But there are little things that we can do. Going digital is one, using less paper. Using mugs that you can use over and over again, as opposed to buying plastic water bottles, installing water coolers in your facilities, installing recycling bins, maintaining simple things like maintaining your equipment. If you maintain your equipment better, you will use less energy. And it's just, making your staff aware of the implications of doing one thing versus doing another. So yeah, there are small wins that we can achieve, but it's about staying the course and educating and keep on pushing so that we can make some measurable improvements in the way in which we live and operate.
Let's do another poll. So this one asks, does the environmental impact of products you purchase, oh, here it is on my screen. Does the environmental impact of products you purchase or companies you support play into your decision making? So this is for the viewers to answer yes or no. Never thought about it till now. Does the environmental impact of products you purchase or companies you support play into your decision making? I would say for me, sometimes. But more often when it's obvious on the product, and it goes back to what we were speaking about earlier, Richard, that labeling. So if I see two products on the shelf side by side, and one says environmentally safe and the other doesn't, I might gravitate towards the environmentally safe product.
Absolutely, assuming
it's
that
there on the label.
Yes, assuming that the price is similar. But if the price is considerably higher, people will think twice about purchasing that environmentally friendly product. So, price is a significant consideration, and particularly now where people's sorry?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello?
Is there an audio difficulty? You're not hearing me?
Oh, I thought you were saying something and then you.
No.
Okay. No, all I was saying is that, yeah, price will play a part. But, I do think that, again, we do need to pay more attention and be more conscious. If you're looking at two products and one is slightly more expensive but environmentally friendly, we should be thinking about, yeah, this is probably good for for our environment.
Yeah, but like I said, it has to be obvious, because I am not going to go research every single product that I use to find out if it's environmentally friendly or not.
Well, this is the point that we were making earlier. If there's a stamp of approval, if there's a standard that needs to be maintained to be able to state that, I think that's a good place to allow consumers to make an informed decision. in purchasing one product over another.
So bring up the poll results with me again. I think 56% said yes. 24%, if I remember, yeah, 59% said yes. That's the environmental impact of products does play a role in your decision making. But then this is a group that already is interested in environment since you are
There
participating
you
in this
go.
forum
Yeah.
and watching that. So 59% of you said yes. And even amongst this group, 24% of you said that you never thought about it till
Thought about
now.
it. There you
So
go. Yeah.
imagine in a wider population, Richard.
Yeah. And it would be interesting to ask the question of those who do consider it, what percentage of the products that you purchase have you taken that into consideration? Because it may be that it's only one product out of many that they purchase that they've given that consideration for.
That's true. That's true because we purchase so many products. How do you keep track of what there is? I saw you had another poll there. Let's see what the other poll is saying. Somebody online says, Khadija says, also, what do we mean by environmentally friendly? That's a good question. What do we mean by environmentally friendly? It's such a vague term and can refer to so many different things. What does it mean to you, Richard?
Well, I mean, it's playing a part, but it's a good question to ask, because to what degree is a business or a product being environmentally? Is there a measure that we need to achieve? Is it carbon neutral, or is it a percentage of neutrality? So yes, the definition is ambiguous. Absolutely, and I think that if we are to create a standard, it should be that there's a measurable improvement. I don't think it's reasonable to expect that a product to have a seal of approval of being green should be simply that they're carbon neutral. I think that there's some level of attainment towards being sustainable and environmentally friendly. So it's to be defined.
I like this poll question. This poll question asks, as a consumer, would you want to know which Caribbean companies have implemented sustainable business strategies? So vote now in the poll. Would you want to know which companies have implemented sustainable business strategies? Yes, no, maybe so. I think that's kind of obvious. I would want to know. It would be
obvious,
nice to know.
yeah, but then it's the degree
it's not
to
necessarily
which
a must know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's they could have put in one sustainable practice. That doesn't mean that they are making measurable improvements. So again, it's something that would have to be defined.
Right. So we have 100% of respondents saying yes.
Yeah.
That one was a pretty straightforward one. I don't think anyone would say no to that question. That would be a delicate one.
There you go.
All right, let's take a look at another issue, Richard, insurance. This is something that's often used by companies to sustain business in the event of unforeseen events, such as a hurricane, some type of natural disaster. And now more recently, businesses are considering pandemic insurance, because a more recent thing that's come up. But what other strategies can use or practice to increase business resilience and sustenance?
Right. Okay. So people are listening will know that insurance is a means by which you can mitigate unforeseen disasters, and it causes you not to have the funds sitting down waiting for that eventuality, and then you pay a premium for that service or that product. So we can't do it with insurance entirely, but companies can do things like improving their internal governance mechanisms and risk management strategies. They can improve their digital capabilities. They can be more vigilant and keeping up with the happenings in the local industry. And they can look at alternative supply chain networks. So if there was a natural disaster, should I be purchasing do I have another available supplier of raw materials that will allow me to purchase those products and to continue to manufacture? That was a prime example during the COVID situation in March, when lots of companies, including mine, pivoted and started to make hand sanitizers. And the demand was so great for the key ingredient, which is ethanol or isopropyl alcohol, that the local suppliers ran out, and even our overseas suppliers ran out. So the JMA lobbied with the government and managed to get our local spirit manufacturers to supply us with ethanol alcohol. And that allowed us to continue to manufacture and supply the local market. And this was long before the government had made arrangements to import made hand sanitizers from the US and other countries. So, you know, it's important that we make sure that the business is set up to be resilient by looking at the risks and then putting in place measures to ensure that you can continue to purchase raw materials and to maintain sustainability.
I'm getting a bravo from one of our viewers online saying, bravo, Richard and the JMEA. That was a really great initiative. Well, thank you so much for participating in this discussion today, Richard. We certainly had a lively one, some good ideas coming out.
Absolutely.
Someone else
it's been
agreed it's multidimensional.
And I tell you, it's been thought-provoking. As you know, we prepared for this seminar. It caused myself and my colleagues at the JMA to really start to think more about what more we could do. So, I'm grateful that you invited us in on this conversation.
Yes, thanks to Live Echo for facilitating it and for planning in the entire Caribbean Environment Week. Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you, Khalida. Take care. Yeah.
And to all our viewers, so that wraps the session for today. I'm sure that you've been having a wonderful time participating in the various sessions this morning, this afternoon. Since Monday, we have other sessions tomorrow. You know where to find us. So you're on now. So you know where to find us, whether it's on YouTube or at liveecho.com. I want to say thanks to our sponsors, Scotia, that's Junk, Junk, Coca-Cola, and also Cayman Business Solutions. So thank you, big up the sponsors all the time. And thank you to all of you who tuned in. Tune in again tomorrow morning. What time do we start? We start at 11 tomorrow. So see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.